As a kid, like I rehearsed for the life that I'm living now. I created this like fabulous cover. And when I started serious acting training, I had to break through all that to get to the truth.
Yeah.
But I didn't let myself be vulnerable. And I was just going around like I was fabulous.
Somebody gonna cue me or do I cue myself?
Cue yourself.
Okay. Hey everybody, we're back with another episode of Let's Talk Off Camera, so let's get talking. Woo! Stand back. Today's guest is an Emmy Award-winning producer, actress, equal rights advocate, and transgender trailblazer. That's right, Laverne Cox. And wow. I mean Laverne Cox is here.
It's a big booking.
Huge. We loved her in everything she's done, including Orange is the New Black, Inventing Anna, the Rocky Horror Picture Show, the documentary Disclosure. She even rocked it as the chess piece in this season's Masked Singer.
Yeah. She was good. She performed a Cher song I saw. She did a good job.
Yeah. I need to start dialing into that show.
I watched an episode of it a while ago.
But while we wait for her to join, Albert and Jan, give me this story. What is going on with you two?
You had a bone to pick with Lauren.
Yeah, what's your bone? Lauren is here.
So we get to the airport lounge in Rome, and we walk past this beautiful buffet station that has everything, hot food, cold foods, a lot of it. Mm-hmm. We hadn't eaten. We got up at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning.
We hadn't eaten because we stopped eating at 1:30 in the morning.
We did stop eating. So I passed this buffet station, and I think, well, I'm not going to eat anything in front of them because they're going to go right for it. What are you eating? You shouldn't be eating that, all that stuff.
Wait, why do you think that?
Because there's a pre-bullying that goes on in my head.
No, that's in your head.
Yeah, but that's the pre-bully. So
but you're attaching that to us.
Okay, well then I go and I sit down and then I say, I'm going for it. I'm going up and I don't give a shit. Even though I'm being pre-bullied in my head from the two of them, I'm going.
No, but you didn't say in your head. You said that we were pre-bullying.
Oh, you definitely were pre-bullying because when I stood up, the both of you gave me that look of...
I was half asleep. I didn't look at anyone.
Lauren definitely gave the look. Oh, you're going up?
This is all in your head.
No, it's not in my head.
It's all in your head.
So I go and there's a beautiful station of bacon, but thick cut bacon. Seth, you would have been all over it. Mm. And there was a whole tray of these Italian sausage links, and then there were scrambled eggs.
They look like, excuse me, pardon me, I'm going to say something controversial here. They look like Bob Evans straight out of the frozen.
They were not
frozen
Bob
Evans down
links.
on the farm links.
So then on the other side of the table was just a really sad yogurt station with cold. 2 different styles of yogurt, a bowl of cut up fresh fruit that could go in the sad yogurt, and then some word, which I don't know why the fuck anyone on the planet eats this. The word alone, muesli.
Muesli's delicious.
It's the worst word of a food. There's nothing less attractive than the word muesli, and I think, these motherfuckers are going to force me to eat this yogurt and this.
We're not only pre-bullying you, we're forcing you to eat.
So I get the sad white.
Yeah, it's a sugar bowl. Let's be clear. That is a sugar bowl.
You just had a bowl of sugar because you added fruit and muesli.
But it's not like it's Greek yogurt.
You're seeing it.
It's like
live.
vanilla,
it wasn't Greek yogurt?
No, it was not Greek yogurt.
Oh, it wasn't Greek yogurt.
Is everybody listening to this, by the way?
No, but that's interesting because it wasn't Greek yogurt.
You're hearing this, yes? Okay, we're still live.
No, but for the record, while it was all happening at the time, you're involving me way too much because I sat there
Hold on,
freezing.
wait, I'm not done.
Okay.
So then I get my sad yogurt, whatever the fuck Greek, Italian, American yogurt it was, and I add some fruit, and I think, they're going to judge what fruit I'm picking out of this thing. So I picked it out. I put it a little dollop of it on the side, and then as I'm walking away, I think, wow, there's a world where I could take one of those sausage links and shove it under the yogurt. and they won't see it. And then I can bring it back. And when they're both on their phones, shove that link in.
But why didn't you do it, Al?
And then no one knows. But then I thought, but this is a concave bowl. And Kelly for sure is going to say, what did you get? Show it to me. So I didn't shove.
Because I have never said that in my life.
Hold
What
on.
did you get shown?
So I didn't shove the link under the yogurt. And I walk back and I sit down. I sit down, I take the fork and the spoon and I go to put it in, and Kelly's like, Al, show me what you got.
But didn't the bullying start earlier with snacks in your office?
Oh, yeah. Lauren, a week or two earlier, came in my office
That is not
and
bullying.
annihilated everything that I had in there. By the way, and here's what I have to say, which really pisses me off.
Yeah, tell me.
You're the fucking reason I know about those Thin Bars.
How many
And
years
that-
ago? That's like 15 years
Okay,
ago.
but 15 years ago, they were acceptable
you're
and you
still
ate them all
eating
the
them.
time.
Guys, I've called the police. Now stop.
You tore through that office like I had went to McDonald's and shoved
you're
hash
being
browns.
very
Like I had a
dramatic.
bowl of hash browns on the fucking coffee table.
You're
They were
really
Thin
dramatic.
Bars. Dr. Passler approved the Thin Bars when I went to him years
Well,
ago.
Dr. Passler should reassess those because then you sent me an image because you were annoyed that I said something about your Thin Bar. So then you sent me an image of what you were snacking on, which is a sleeve of Mentos and
Oh,
what?
just to piss her off, we had some Mentos in Julia's office.
Oh,
and I
please!
brought them
You
over.
definitely had them. You're like, I'm done already.
I had half of them.
Like, who eats like that midday?
I do when you come in and you judge the food that I eat. I fucking punish you by sending you a picture of Mentos.
Who eats Mentos?
People-
Who buys Mentos?
Normal people on the streets
Nobody
when they go
buys
to a kiosk and a fucking bodega, there's Mentos right there. They don't have them right in front of the cashier because no one buys them. They have them because people buy Mentos.
The weak buy Mentos.
The what?
The weak.
This episode is brought to you by Mentos, the fresh maker.
The week by Mentos.
The wheat by me.
Oh my God.
You're bullying. Hello. It's all being validated. It's all validated right here. You at home can judge for yourself.
Yeah, but you can't complain about weight or anything and then eat shit.
Well, no. So what I did after I ate the bowl of sad white yogurt with fruit, I sat there for 5 minutes, and in my mind, I went, "Fuck those two." I got up. I did. I got up and I
got up in
a huff. And I went over to the table and I got bacon.
And you were concerned because when you got there, the bacon was gone.
They brought a nice fresh bowl of bacon when I went back.
You waited for them to bring
I
a nice
saw them
fresh-
bring it over, and I got a couple sausage links and the bacon. And
So
I
were
was
you
very
revenge
happy.
eating at that
Oh,
point?
100% revenge.
He was punishing us.
If
by
they had
eating a
Mentos
plate
there, I
of
would have had
sausage.
Mentos on the plate also.
And then he thought he would distract me. He goes, "Kel, look, two priests." And I was like,
There were two priests around the
Because
corner.
she went and take
So
a look
you
at his
turn-
plate.
You turn your head and he shoves a link in.
There were two priests.
he was so fascinated by the priests in the airport lounge.
Anyway, there you go.
Okay.
All right, what can I tell you? I mean, that is the most ridiculous. And what I loved about this whole moment was watching him getting pissed off and watching you not back down. That's my girl.
Never back down.
That's my girl.
Ever.
What you just heard and what Seth and Jan had to witness and poor Rozzo on the floor over there, that is how Italian people communicate at all
That was a
times.
love conversation.
That was a loving conversation, okay? That was the most loving
That
conversation.
is true. It is love.
It does. It brings
Is
me.
that love?
I feel loved after
Yeah.
that.
Don't bring any of this up to Laverne.
Yeah, I know.
All right. Can Laverne hear me?
How are you?
Hi, beautiful.
Hello, Kelly.
You look gorgeous.
I appreciate that. My eyes look puffy to me. I didn't sleep very well.
Same.
But
Nobody
I-
I know has slept well. What is it? Is something in retrograde?
The world?
There's not.
Yes. The world is, in fact, in retrograde.
We are in.
Yes, we are. We're in trouble, girl.
Molly, you in danger, girl, to quote Whoopi from Ghost.
Danger, girl. We had Uzo Aduba on the
Yes.
show a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking to us about Orange is the New Black. And I asked her, I said, did you know that show was going to be such a smash, like when you read that script? And she said she had no idea. And I'm curious what you thought about it.
I had no idea either. And What you have to understand is so funny because Uzo and I both were going to quit acting before we booked the Orange jobs,
That's so
which is crazy.
interesting.
And now she's
really?
won like 3 or 4 Emmys, which is insane. And she made history winning an Emmy in both the comedy category and the drama category for the same role. Ed Asner was the last person who did that. Brilliant, brilliant artist and just the sweetest person. No, and you have to understand in 2012 when we started shooting the first season, House of Cards hadn't even premiered yet. So the streaming that exists now was not a thing.
Right.
And so I was telling people were like, I was doing a web series because I'm like, I'm doing a web series, for the company. Remember Netflix used to send the DVDs.
Of course.
So like they're like, they do the DVDs and now they're doing web series. And I was just like, okay. But I was like, but they have a budget. I'm like, Jodie Foster's directing me. Like I met Jodie Foster the first day I was there. Which
Was that so
freaks me
exciting?
out. It freaks me out, actually. Yeah. I went and I had like one line in the pilot, and I was at craft services checking out the food, and this short woman comes up to me, and she's wearing glasses and her hair's back, and she's like, "Hi, I'm Jodie. I'm directing episode 3." Now, I didn't know that episode 3 would be my character's backstory. I didn't know any of that. I'm like I'm not famous. I'm just like in rent arrears, right? And I just turned 40 and was going to quit acting because, I'm Black.
Why am
I'm
I doing this
trans.
to myself?
Why am I doing this to myself? I'm delusional. So then I'm there with this gig on a day rate kind of thing where I was getting paid like hourly or something. It's not whatever. And then Jodie Foster walks up to me, and so I was just like, what is going on? And I thought I was just kind of like, and then she was like, it's your first day, right? Let me give you a tour of the set. So then Jodie Foster commences to give me a tour of the set of Orange. And the whole time I'm trying to stay really calm. I'm like, what the fuck? Jodie Foster, what is, and I'm like inside, I love Jodie Foster.
Yeah.
Like
She's the coolest chick ever.
She is, but like before I met her, I studied her film work. Like I've watched her performances over and over again and studied them and studied how she, drops in and the camera. I've studied her. And so just to meet her, I was like, when I finally went back to my dressing room, I called my brother because I was hyperventilating. I was like, I just met Jodie Foster. I'm freaking out. I don't think I can act. Like I was just, and my brother's like, breathe. I was freaking. I had a full-on panic attack. Honest, I really did.
So you had like that relationship with your brother where you can like call upon him to like talk you down.
I still do.
So do you know how lucky you are?
I do, and it's what's so remarkable about my brother. And we've had, it's 52 years. We're twins, so we've had our ups and downs. But when we had a period, maybe a decade ago, where we had a big fight and we didn't talk for like 3 or 4 months, and it was so painful. And finally I reached out and I said, I could cry. It's been so hard not talking to you. And he said, it's been so hard not talking to you too. It's like, let's never do that again. And the gift that I'm really, I'm planning to like eventually write a book. So I've been thinking a lot about my life, and my whole life I've had a human being who gets me, understands me, affirms me as my brother, because I grew up studying dance with my brother, who was the first person who was like, he saw me like recite a poem or something in college, and he was like, you're an actor. Dancing is fun. You're an actor. You're a brilliant actor. That's what you should be pursuing. Like he was the first person, and then for years he kept saying it. And I was doing a lot of theater when I was at Marymount in college, and then I got serious after I graduated and found Susan Batson. But like he believed in me as an artist, but he's an artist himself. So we shared. There's no one else in our family who's like artistic. So he drew and painted very realistically from an early age. Like he was that kind of genius kid who everyone's like, oh my God, this picture is amazing. And when you do that, people get excited about your talent. And I was like a dancer, and I was assigned male at birth, so everyone like made fun of me and like called me a sissy. And I was the ballerina, which wasn't cool. But my brother like had this artistic talent and literally won every award that I in grade school, middle school, high school, every local, state, and national art award you could win, he won. And he went to the San Francisco Art Institute and got his Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in painting, sculpture, and then he started doing installation. But he's a genius, and he's brilliant and really smart. And now he got into Yale graduate school for visual art, and after a year dropped out and started a rock band back in the 90s. And my brother, like, he literally coined the term Negro Gothic. And so he has this Negro Gothic aesthetic and a punk rock sensibility, and is very subculturally identified. But he is really smart.
I wonder, your brother was inspired by you. You were a dancer and a ballerina. Did he draw you a lot?
Oh, yeah. I pose for him all the time. Like, in my mom's house, there's all these like paintings of me and drawings of me, like, that my brother did when I was a kid.
So all of the Disney princesses were based on ballerinas that the early Disney animators were married to. They were all married to ballet dancers because that's how they got Cinderella and Snow White to move the way they did from watching.
I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
so
the
it's really
influence of
interesting that
ballet.
you were his Disney princess. You were like his earliest. You know what I mean? When you think about it.
Yeah, I posed for him a lot. And then there was so many influences and things I read, and my understanding of visual art and art history is so much because of that relationship, that like we're just steeped in art, and our love for opera developed together when we were kids, and we would watch PBS together. I mean, God, this sounds so like nerdy and lame, but we would watch PBS great performances together.
Yeah.
We fell in love with Jesse Norman and Leontine Price together, watching great performances on PBS. And there was a special Jesse Norman Sings Carmen. We had it on VHS and watched it over and over again, and we would like quote from Jesse Norman singing Carmen. It was like following her recording Carmen, and there was this one moment when she's like, Carmen is never a victim from the start. She says it in the first aria. She said it in the first words, libre et je suis née et libre elle est mourra. It's different words, but it's the same meaning. Free I was born and free I would die. So we would like quote Jesse Norman and pretend to be Jesse Norman.
And like there's nobody else in your family that's artistic or creative.
No.
And they're like, the twins have special abilities? Were they?
No. It was like we were the freaks, the outcast. So I went to boarding school in Birmingham at the Alabama School of Fine Arts, but I'm from Mobile. So Birmingham is 4 hours north of Mobile. So I was at the Alabama School of Fine Arts, and my Aunt Geraldine lived in Birmingham. And my mother, I didn't know this, but now, like a few years ago, my mother told me that she would say, Geraldine, could you go visit, the twins at ASFA at School of Fine Arts? She's like, I'm not going there with all those freaks and weirdos, So that so my Aunt Geraldine was like that weirdo school with all those freaks, and like we were like the sort of black sheep of the family because we were weird and different, and like all the sort of like me being people sort of calling me sissy and the F word and all those things. So,
but what did your mom think of that? Or what did your
mom was? What's deep to me about my mom are the levels of denial. Like, it's so weird when I like came out to her. I came out as gay first, and then trans a few years later, and she was so surprised and like, girl, Miss Ridgway called in 3rd grade and said I would end up in New Orleans wearing a dress if we didn't get me in therapy right away. And I went to like conversion therapy in 3rd grade. Like, and you're shocked. And I come out to her and she freaks out. I was in college. I went to Indiana University for 2 years, and I transferred to Marymount Manhattan College here in New York. And I came out to her like my sophomore year in college, and she was freaked out. And I was like, why is this woman freaking out? I've been called sissy and the F word my whole life. I've been bullied, like chased. Like, why are you gagging? The denial. Did
you talk to her about that? Did she give you a why? Like, we hear this story a lot. They're always from a point of, what if I don't have grandkids? Which is the weirdest thing. It's like always
that wasn't her concern. That wasn't my mother's concern. Grandkids. Strangely enough, she wasn't like trying to be a grandmother, which is great because he's not going to be.
Mm.
I remember she just it's funny because I told her she was dating a guy at the time, and I told her like one morning, and she was really calm. And then a week later, she calls me freaking out. The guy she was dating, she had been with him every day since I told her, and she's freaking out. So this would have been 1992, around 1992 or so, and so AIDS came up. That was like the first thing that she was concerned about, HIV and AIDS. And I was like, there's a such thing as safer sex. And this is what I'm doing. And I think it was so much. My mother was then, and I think it's a small town thing, but she was also super concerned about other people, like what the other people in the town would say, even more so. Like she was concerned about the AIDS, and she's concerned about what other people would think and or say. And I think she could have the plausible deniability with it if I didn't say it. But then if I said it, she had to like confront it. And she had gay friends who were around, two specifically, who unfortunately both died from HIV AIDS, and really good friends. And she would say the most homophobic things about them behind their backs. I'm spilling all my mother's tea. Ooh. But she would she had gay friends and said the most homophobic things to them. So of course I didn't feel like safe, coming out to her. It was a crazy denial. And then there's so many moments from my childhood that she's blocked out. I'm like, remember when this happened? Like really horrible things that she did. We're cool now. I've been in therapy. She did very light therapy. And we're good now. We've repaired all of that, and it's great. And I love my mom, and I get it, and I understand where she's coming from. Right. And I've healed all of the, when you're a kid, you don't have tools. So I've healed all that. So all is forgiven, but she's blocked out so much. And I've talked to trans friends of mine, and their parents did the same thing. It's so interesting. My speculation is if she allowed herself to remember what she did, she might not be able to live with herself because it was so mean. It was so emotionally abusive. This is my theory. And it's easier to block it out. But also, you have to understand that this woman was a single mother raising 2 kids by herself. She put herself through undergraduate and graduate school, taking care of 2 kids by herself, working sometimes up to 4 jobs, literally 4 jobs. This is insane. And the stress around money was constant, and she had no tools to deal with any of this. Yeah. And this is the grace I give to her. She grew up with a very abusive father who was raised on a plantation in the context of sharecropping, right? And so he grew up in a very violent situation. Sharecropping was like, slavery 2.0. And so he was beaten by the white, plantation owners as a child, beaten to work, to pick cotton and, work the plantation. And so he was really abusive to my grandmother.
It's so systemic.
She did the best that she can. And I get it and I understand it. And I'm not having kids, but I can break that cycle now because it's education. It's 24 years of therapy, and I can heal from all that. I don't have to, and all that stuff is passed down. It's passed down in our cells, and it's passed down in behavior.
But if you were to have a kid, you'd be the best mother. If you were to have a kid, you'd be the best mother.
I honestly believe, though, Kelly, that I would be so freaked out because you do damage even when you don't intend to. They watch what you do and say. There's so many things that can fuck up a child. There's so many things that you are not even in control of. And now with social media, I would be. Oh, yeah. I remember Alicia Reiner, one of my co-stars from Orange, she invited my boyfriend at the time and me to. They have a house in Fire Island, so we went, and she had a 6-year-old daughter at the time, and this girl was a little Meryl Streep, both because Alicia's married to an actor, so both her parents are actors. She had a bedtime that was earlier than us because we were adults and she's 6 years old. And she wanted to eat with us and she threw the most dramatic temper tantrum. I feel like you're not listening to me and that you don't care about me and I don't feel seen. And it was like, I mean, a 6-year-old. And it was so, she was really smart and mature and like had an emotional intelligence, but she was just like so dramatic. Like it was so like this girl should be an actor because it was like it was a full brilliant performance. But that whole weekend, I was so attentive and careful around her because I didn't want to do anything that weekend that would scar this child for life. And I was not relaxed at all. I would be in such anxiety about scarring the child for life. I'd be in such anxiety about the child being abused or bullied when they left me. I would be in such anxiety about them not having the best education. I would be a wreck. I would be an emotional wreck if I had a child. I don't know how you people do it.
We ask ourselves that all the time.
It's such a huge responsibility to raise a human being, to care for another human being, for their welfare, for their psychological, emotional welfare, for their education, for their health and well-being. It's so colossally huge.
You really do only fuck it up, but it's just degrees of fucking it up and always trying to not fuck it up too much. You know what I mean? Kids are very forgiving and pliable and they're very understanding. They just want to be loved as long as you're providing that.
That is the key. This is what I didn't feel that as a child. I didn't.
Right, and that's
so
a problem.
I've had to get that as an adult. I've had to feel
you to learn how to love
my
yourself.
worthiness, loving myself, finding my worthiness. I was involved in group therapy like 2009. I started this group therapy, and one of the group members was like, "You are so amazing and just incredible, and you have no idea how incredible you are." And I really didn't. I was in so much shame and trauma, and he was like, "I'm gonna love you until you learn how to love yourself."
I've got to tell you, it's so interesting to hear you talk this way because when I look at you, I'm like, oh my God, if I could be like Laverne, confident, self-assured, you always strike the right pose, you always strike the right note, you're a great, amazing, brilliant actor. You're an incredible talk show guest. You're a great person. Like your energy is just like I will sit like and watch a step and repeat, and I love to watch you because you exude all of the things that you said you never felt, which is incredible to me.
Well, I was always practicing. I think, I couldn't see it in myself. So I think like as a kid, like I rehearsed for the life that I'm living now and imagined it and was manifesting before I even knew what that meant. Yeah. But I was so armored up. I had so many layers of protection because I had been so abused and so I never felt safe anywhere. So I created this like fabulous cover. And when I started serious acting training, I had to break through all that to get to the truth and the pain and the vulnerability. But I didn't let myself be vulnerable. And I was just going around like I was fabulous. And but I was also really mean to people. I worked at a restaurant at the time. Years later, I was in an audition and I was in the audition room and this actress was there. She was like, "Oh my God, we used to work at coffee shop together." I worked the graveyard shift and she worked the dinner shift. And she was like, we worked together. And she was like, "You were always so mean." She said this. She said, before we were auditioning, girl, I'm like, she's like, "You were so mean."
What do you say to that?
What Laverne said was, "You're right. I was. I didn't like myself. I didn't want to be waiting tables. I was really unhappy. And I took that on other people. And that wasn't right. And I'm sorry that I did that.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry I did that. But I didn't like myself and I was really unhappy."
That's incredible that you had I guess that's like the benefit of therapy. Therapy gives you those
But
gifts.
I hate, there were so many moments in the 19 years that I worked in restaurants in New York where sometimes I would I was always, anything I did, I was going to excel at it. So I was going to be the best waitress ever. But there were so many moments when I was so frustrated. I was like, I should not be waiting tables. I thought I should be a superstar. Like when I moved to New York at 21 years old, I was like, I'm gonna be a superstar in 2-3 years tops, you know? And year after year, I was waiting tables and going on auditions, and it wasn't happening. And I was getting more and more frustrated, bitter, angry, and I took it. I was so unhappy, and I hadn't transitioned yet either. So like living the lie of not like fully accepting my gender.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting, and you're gonna be mean. You're gonna be mean to people because you don't like yourself. If you don't like yourself, you're gonna be really mean to other people. You know, it's just all I could do because I was just so. It's not an excuse, but I was
it's a
mean.
fact of the matter is what it is. And also, waiting tables in New York is hell, and people in New York can be absolute monsters, beasts.
Correct.
And when you get a large group of New Yorkers together in a large room and they're paying money for something, they think they own time, your time, the world's time.
And when I was at coffee shop, I worked the graveyard shift. So, and I would pick up, I remember when the late night shift got slow, I picked up day shifts so I could make more money because it just was pretty much always busy during the day. And one of the owners saw me during the day and told the late night manager I could not work days anymore. They only wanted me at night. I was like I started out sort of gender non-conforming and very like club kitty when I started working there. And then I transitioned, and they were fine with me late night because the club crowd was coming in, but they did not want to see me there during the day. And that was hard because for me, it was about the money. I was very clear about that. But the late night shift, you're also dealing with drunk people who are on drugs.
Right. Drunk, on drugs, don't know how money works, don't know where things are. They can't do anything.
And then I worked at Lucky Chang's after that. And so I was dealing with drunk bachelorettes and birthday girls from New Jersey and Connecticut in the tri-state area. And I've dealt with every, iteration of drunk high people, but there's something really colossal and scary about drunk white girls. And I hope this doesn't sound racist, but drunk white girls can F you up. It's a whole.
That's why I don't drink.
It's a lot. And I've just seen it just in 19 years. It's just my 19 years of 19 years in restaurants in New York. That's a long time, girl. Jesus Christ.
It's like you have to write this book, by the way. You have to write
I know. Well, it's in the works. It's going to happen. So but the experiences I've had though, and I have lived, and as I think back on my life, and I'm 52 now, and I'm so much more chill, and I'm work and sleep, and I try to have some kind of social life. But when I was younger, I lived. I got to New York in 1993, and I was in college, and I had Graham Technique at 7:30 a.m. and I would be at Limelight, and then after hours until 6 a.m. I remember I would literally leave after hours at 5:36, go home, wash my face, and then go to Graham Technique at 7:30 in the morning.
What years did you work at Lucky Chang? I used to go there all the time.
I was at coffee shop 94 to 2004, and I was at Lucky Chang's from 2004 to 2012.
Yes, I already had 3 kids by then.
Okay, you weren't the drunk white girl.
No, I was there in the 90s. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I remember. I sort of had a gauge for whether or not I could be with a guy. I would take him to Lucky Chang. And if he
could be a dangerous girl.
No, if he had a reaction, if he was a closed off person, then the relationship sort of ended there. And Mark was like, I love this place.
That's great. That's awesome. That is a good gauge, but then it's also one of those times. I mean, it's mostly bachelorettes, but then sometimes the bachelorettes would send their husbands to be to Lucky Chang's to have their bachelor parties instead of getting strippers, and they thought their husbands
they were safe
around the drag queens. And I can attest to you from personal experience, they were not safe.
No, of course not.
There was a bachelor. I remember a very handsome bachelor who was there celebrating, and was very interested in Laverne a week before he got married. And that's all I'm going to say.
I'm not surprised.
It's so funny too, just thinking about how when I was young and insecure, and when I would wait tables at coffee shop in the early 2000s, and I would work, and a guy didn't ask me for my number, I was a mess. Like I felt
You would
like
shut down.
so much of my worth was like, did a guy ask me for my number today? This is being in your 20s too.
Right.
Of course.
But I just look back and I'm like, God, that was so sad. But I think that's just part of being in your 20s and something you have to go through. But like back in the day, men asked for your number and they'd ask you out. Obviously, I had to deal with the trans thing. Oh my God, there was this one story. There was a period when you transition. I started my medical transition in 1998. And so like when I start, I had been dating guys, obviously, but there's a period in your transition where there's a point when guys always knew and it wasn't an issue. And there was a point in your transition when all of a sudden guys, like
They don't know.
assumed as cisgender more and they don't know. And like I just assumed that this guy knew, and he had come to coffee shop. He was a regular. I remember he was a regular and he came all the time. So I was not like, I didn't even like my voice, my deep voice. I wasn't even trying. He was just a regular and he was really cool. And I remember that's one night he had like literally like 6 to 8 months he had been coming, and he would request me to like wait on him. He was there celebrating with his friends. He had literally, it was the .com boom, and he had just sold his company.
Okay.
And so he was like celebrating, and he had just moved into this gorgeous house in like Murray Hill. Somehow he was there when I got off from work, and he was like, let's share a cab. And I ended up at his place. Long story short, I thought he knew and he did not know. And that's when I was like, oh, I need to like make sure that they know now.
God, it's got to be so exhausting. But
It really
so,
is.
like, I'm like looking at your body language. They're like, so then I had to like figure it out.
Yeah, because then it's like, when do you, and then you're figuring out when you tell them,
When
right?
do you,
Like, when is that?
When do you have that conversation? And so sometimes I'm assuming you're talking to people that figure it out on their own, intuitively, autonomously, whatever.
Yes.
And then you inform them and they're like, yeah, and?
Correct. That happened to me with the boyfriend I met in 2001. We met at this club. I ended up hanging out with him and his best friend all night long. We just talking. And then I kind of started liking him. And then like, I felt like we were going to kiss. And then I was like, I have something to tell you. And I was all dramatic. And then I told him I was trans. And he was like, is that it? And so after that, I was like, okay, let's be more nonchalant. Let's make sure they know. Like, kind of, let's assume they know, but just make sure. And so so after that, I was like, I'm trans. And at the time it was transsexual, just because like that was clear as soon as people weren't using transgender. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm transsexual, right? And like, so that's the way I would do it. I'm transsexual, right? Just very like nonchalant. And like, oh yeah, it's cool. Or no, I didn't know. Thank you for telling me. I didn't know, but that's okay. I didn't know, but it's not okay. Whatever the response would be. And it takes a few years to figure that out. It takes, and at the time when I transitioned, I didn't have a trans community. I did go to support groups at the LGBTQ Center for trans women, but like we never got into any of that. So I didn't have like a group of girlfriends. So I kind of figured a lot of stuff out on my own. And when I transitioned too, I kind of didn't want to be in gay spaces. I wanted to just sort of be in straight spaces because they, a lot of gay folks would want to make you a drag queen.
I mean, you're really like a pioneer in a lot of ways, because when I'm thinking about it, there's like, where was
in
the place?
1998. I mean,
Right.
in New York, New York was a better place because even being able to transition at coffee shop was amazing.
Right.
And there was access to healthcare in New York. Not a lot, street harassment is also a huge issue in New York for just women in general. But when you're trans, when they would, the piece of being on the street, and then like a guy would be like, oh, you looking fine, mama. And then they would realize you're trans, or a friend would realize you're trans. So the like flirting would turn into like harassment, like calling me a man. And then it's like really not safe. Even the catcalling never felt safe either. So there's just so many things to like navigate.
So I guess in a way, like you becoming famous took an enormous portion of that off of your plate. You no longer have to explain anything because
For the most part, early on, I remember I was at a club. It's so funny. I remember I was at what was it? Was it Kiss and Fly? I was at a club in Meatpacking, and I was with my girlfriends, and I was dancing with this guy, and he was cute, and I was kind of like, I just could, I could work with this. But Orange, it just had come out. I think it was the first year of it because I was still going to clubs with my girlfriends. Like, I wasn't famous, and I was like a still normal person, and I was still the same, but like the world had changed. So I'm dancing with this guy, whatever, and then like he's really feeling me, and he's like maybe wanting to go home with me. I was like, "Do you have internet on your phone?" He was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Google Laverne Cox," and I was like, "Yeah, click on that." It was my website. Click on that, and click on that. Read that. And then I'm sitting there, and he was like, oh, okay. I'm good, thank you. And then he just kind of leaves.
That was it? What?
And he leaves. Yeah, he didn't know. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I'm dancing with my friends. And then another guy comes along, because, and so I'm dancing with the next guy, because this is how my life was back in the day, dancing with the next guy, and we're dancing, and like, I'm not that into this one, but I'm just having fun. So I'm like, I'm not going to go home with him. I'm not going to kiss him. I don't need to say anything about being trans. But the first guy, because this happens all the time, he's like trying to get the guy's attention to tell him that I'm trans, because he can't imagine that this guy would actually dance with me knowing that I'm trans. And then I'm watching this guy, because this is not the first time this has happened to me. This has happened many times in the past, where like I'm at a club with a guy. One time it was with my ex-boyfriend. So I'm dancing with my ex-boyfriend. It was a birthday party. Like, I was dancing with my ex-boyfriend, and we were at a club, and then this other guy, like, when my ex went to the bathroom, was like, that person you're dancing with is quote unquote a man. It's what they would say. And he was like, fuck you, that's my girlfriend. Like, she's a woman. But like, they were like trying to protect each other. Like, the guys don't know. And then the new guy was kind of like, leave me alone, kind of like,
get away from me.
He was like, get away from me. And then I was like, he said something to me, and I was like, he clearly knew. So it was one of those, sometimes they'll say something, and it's like, oh, okay, he knows the tea. Right. And I still wasn't interested in anything beyond dancing. But like, the guy knew, and the first guy thought he was protecting his bro or whatever that he didn't even know.
Yes, because men can never protect themselves.
Right. So like, that happened so many times when I was like in my single life, back in the day. And so being famous definitely helps. But being famous now, it's like in the trans community, like, I have a few trans girlfriends who are sex workers, and the smart sex workers are very good with their confidentiality around their celebrity clients, right? But this one girl who's like, she doesn't ever name a name, but she'll drop clues about like some of the famous men, and then just over the years, hear rumors about like some of the famous guys who are into trans girls. Right. And so I just remember the first time when I was nominated for my Emmy like 10 years ago, and I go to Hollywood, for the first time, and like some of those guys that we've heard the rumors about, I'm in the room with them, and a few of them flirted. And then a few of them were freaked out. And it's funny because one of them always flirted with me and was really sweet. And then like, there was this one point when it turned, I was at Soho House, and I was at a lunch or something, and he'd always flirted with me, and he was at a business meeting during the day. And I think something clicked with him where I think he was like, I'm speculating, I don't know what, maybe he was dating someone, whatever. He even did a little thing with the publicist, like when we were at an event together, and he had his publicist bring me like an invitation to like, an event he was doing. And I went over and just said to him in front of a group of people, thanks for the invite, but I can't go. And then he's freaking out, and he's like kind of uncomfortable, because I'm like saying, I can't come to the event, I'm working on it. And I saw him freaking out, and I was like, oh, this was supposed to be the secretive publicist kind of situation. And people are going to start speculating. And I was like, okay, I'm 40 at the time. I was like 42 years old. Mm-hmm. I am Laverne Cox. I think by this time I'd been on the cover of Time magazine. Right. I was nominated for an Emmy. I'm like, we're not doing this. I'm not going to be your dirty little secret. I'm not here in this industry as someone who, I don't want to say I'm not your equal, but like, you're not going to DL me.
At that point, did you want to say, everybody already knows?
No.
Everybody talks about it.
That's not my place. And just because they're into trans women doesn't mean doesn't make them gay. Like there's pansexuality, there's bisexuality. A lot of straight men too see trans women as women, and
Correct.
so
I would think that would make them not gay.
So exactly, they understand that I'm a woman and they're attracted to women, and so they don't see a difference between me as a trans woman and you as a woman.
It's not that difficult to understand.
No, and we're human beings like everybody else,
Right.
and it's just I'm just me doing my own thing,
Right.
and people get so bent out of place.
You did that your appearance on The Daily Show, your monologue.
Yes, that was
the best.
That should have to be required viewing for everyone. You did that your appearance on The Daily Show, your monologue.
Yes, that was
the best.
That should have to be required viewing for everyone.
That's so sweet. What was so great about doing that is that over the past few years, I have been exhausted talking about politics as a trans person. Like the difference between like 10 years ago and now is that like trans people were able to set the agenda for how we were talked about, because we just didn't exist in mainstream media like at the time. And, I was the first, to kind of break those walls down. And so when we became more visible, the right wing then on anti-trans people got these very strategic talking points and started pushing them. And I refused to go on into mainstream media and debate my humanity, debate my right to exist. And I refuse to have a conversation in framing that is dehumanizing. So that's been hard. Watching, 26 states ban gender affirming care for young people. It's been really hard watching, this last presidential election, $215 million being spent on anti-trans ads. It's a rough time. Doing the Daily Show moment was a way to laugh, because I'm an actor, I'm an artist. I'm so sensitive, and I love being trans and I love advocating for my community, but this stuff is traumatizing and it's devastating.
It is traumatizing. As bystanders, it's traumatizing.
Exactly. So I have to protect my mental health. And so what was so great about doing the Daily Show is that I could go on and I could work with their brilliant writers. We did that monologue in a day and a half. Wow. And in consultation with me, and they're brilliant, and we could laugh and obviously make points, but laugh about it, at the ridiculousness of all of it. And that felt very super therapeutic for me. And so finding ways to laugh about this is really crucial for me right now.
But it was very funny, but it was very accurate, and it was a way to get a message out. The messaging was clean. Your delivery was laser sharp and so endearing and charming. And I was like, they should force all of Congress and every senator to watch this.
Well, they don't want to. I mean,
I know they don't.
They don't
but there's
want to
a
hear
reason
from us.
why.
They want to pretend we don't exist, and they want to do everything to make sure we don't.
Maybe sometimes it just hits too close to home, and sometimes when people can't be what they are, or people are suffering internally, they want to shut down.
For sure. There's that individual piece, and then there's also the power piece, right? So there's the individuals who don't get it and are scared and don't know what it means for them to be a man or a woman, or that's all very slippery for them, because it really is, right? Mm-hmm. And the brilliance about women, and I love being a woman, and just women have done so much growth over the past 6 decades of having the pill, having access to our bodies, and we're more educated on average than men are. We can make our own money. We are empowered and evolved, and we don't need men. I love men, and but we don't need them. And so our roles have changed, and the smart, evolved men have evolved with us. But so many men have chosen not to, or they get this message that they're supposed to still be this old school kind of man, and they don't question that. And then So they're getting these messages about being a provider, being masculine. And then the whole economy is set up so that like they can't afford to buy a house and they can't afford to pay rent and inflation's crazy. So then they want, instead of having a systemic critique about that and understanding, they want to blame other people. So they blame women, they blame feminism, they blame trans people. And it's capitalism, and it's the lies of people in power who pit people against each other so that they can maintain their power. And that is the bigger piece that everyone doesn't have the critical awareness to think about or don't want to think about. And it's when it comes to gender, it's so much easier to think that it's just the same way we always thought it was. And so, because so much is changing in the world. And I think a lot of people just want to believe that, like, when someone's having a baby, is it a boy or a girl? And it's that simple. But it's never been that simple. We just, it didn't acknowledge the existence of trans people and intersex people. Even quote unquote biological sex is not binary.
Right.
There's more intersex people than redheads in this country.
Is that true?
It needs to be intersex, right?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, yeah,
but I did not know that.
There are more intersex people than redheads. So these are things that they want to downplay or not. It's just reality, and they want to sort of tell us about reality. And it's like, well, the reality is that, like, even genetically, gender isn't binary, like, right? That there's some people who are born with conditions where they may have, a vagina and undescended testes.
Correct. But I'm just saying, in general, these are people that could not pass 5th grade biology, that are in charge of rules and laws governing the bodies of women.
Correct.
And trans people. That's who's in charge. Yeah.
And they're connected. I was at Planned Parenthood in Kansas City last week. They they were able to pass the constitutional amendment, adding reproductive care to their state constitution. But there's an injunction, so they're still waiting to be able to perform abortions. But it's been years with all the restrictions in Missouri. And Planned Parenthood has been trying to figure out ways to get people care all over the country. And I've supported them for years, but the relationship between bodily autonomy, for me as a trans woman, is I can't get pregnant, but I've always it's devastating to me too.
It's connected.
It's devastating to me. When the Dobbs decision came down, I was gutted.
Because you have empathy, because you are a thoughtful woman. You're an empath, and that's the only thing. It's like, nobody is forcing anyone in Congress or the Senate or anyone in government to be a trans person.
Or to have an abortion, or to do anything.
Or to have an abortion.
It's about the right to be able to live your life and have control over your life.
All right, I want to talk. I need to talk about your series. I have to talk about Clean Slate. It's Amazon Prime. It comes out February 6th. And you are the executive producer, the co-creator. You're the star of the series. It's loosely based on your life, correct?
Yes, correct.
So you're working with George Wallace, which is like dreams come true. I mean, for me, in my mind, dream come true. He
absolutely
plays a car wash owner in Alabama, and his son returns home as a trans woman played by you.
Yes.
Have I set it up correctly?
Basically, yeah. So my character, Desiree, leaves Mobile, Alabama at like 17 years old and doesn't come back for 23 years. And so my dad hasn't seen me in 23 years, has barely heard from me. He does not know that I'm trans. I send him an email and he doesn't know. So he opens the door and he's like, pretty lady, I don't know what you're here for, but I'm waiting for my son. And she's like, Dad, it's me. And it becomes about them, and then they end up living together. So it's sort of this odd couple situation where this, it's an intergenerational thing. It's him adjusting to having a daughter now instead of like, a son. His wife, my mother, passed away when I was really young, and she was my protector. And God, there's so many things. And my best friend Lewis is like the choir director, but he's like he's gay and in the closet. And Thelma Hopkins plays his mother.
Oh my gosh. What a cast.
And one of the George Wallace's Harry's employees at the car wash, Mac, has a brilliant 12-year-old daughter named Opal. And we find out in the pilot, spoiler alert, that Mac has been to prison, and Harry didn't know this. So it's a show about family, our genetic families and chosen family, all these different families. And it's a show about a father's unconditional love for his daughter. And it is so funny. And just and we have to say Norman Lear executive produced it as well. The late, great Norman Lear.
Which is amazing because Norman Lear, when you think about the history of his work.
I know.
He had his finger on the pulse of everything until the day he died. And
Absolutely.
I wished he didn't. He's one of those people you're like, please let him live forever.
I wish
Wrap
he
him
were
in bubble
here.
wrap.
I wish he were here to talk about this show with us, because we pitched the show with Norman. He likes to be called, I want to call him Mr. Lear, but he said, call me Norman.
Yeah.
We pitched the show with Norman. So I was in rooms with Norman Lear, George Wallace, Dan Ewing, who co-created the show with me, pitching with Norman Lear. And it was just so crazy. Our first meeting with Norman, we sat for about an hour and 15 minutes. And after that hour and 15 minutes, Norman said, I learned more about life in the past hour than I have in 96 years of living. Stuff I should have known, but didn't know. And he, said yes to working with us on the show, and we put the package together and went and pitched, and got no's everywhere, even with Norman Lear.
That's crazy.
Got no's. It kind of is. It really is. We got no's everywhere, and Norman and Brent were relentless. We had a development deal at Peacock for a year that fell through, and then we ended up at Amazon, and it kind of is a miracle. And we found out Amazon was buying us on Norman's 100th birthday.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
That the show was picked up on his 100th birthday. And just getting to work with him. He's such, and I'm 52. I grew up with his shows, right?
Of course.
So I watched the Jeffersons and the theme songs. Oh my God, the Facts of Life theme song, the Good Times theme song, All in the Family theme song, the theme songs. But the shows I grew up with, and the character acting, and we think about really Good Times had such brilliant character actors. And the woman who would become my acting coach later on, Susan Batson, who really codified my respect for the craft of acting. Susan Batson had 2 different guest spots on Good Times. There was this one episode where JJ was going to the employment office, and I just remember imitating Susan when I was a kid. I imitated Cheryl Lee Ralph, who was dating JJ, and she was like, I do love bowling, but the night air is murder on my lip gloss. So I was a 7-year-old. I was a 7-year-old walking around the apartment, little apartment we had, 2-bedroom apartment in Mobile, Alabama, saying the night air is murder on my lip gloss. And my brother was there to witness it. And I also imitated Susan Batson, and James Evans Jr. And she was this very sort of curmudgeon worker at the employment agency, and she had this shrill accent, and James, you have no experience, you have no qualifications, I don't think I can find you a job. And it was this, now I understand, brilliant character work. Susan is this brilliant actor who wrote a book on acting, coaches Nicole Kidman, coaches Juliette Binoche, coaches Oscar winners. I studied with her at her studio in New York, 2001, 2 or so. I started working with her, but I was a kid and saw her on Good Times and connected to her and the craft, and there was just so much brilliant character work on that show.
Yeah.
And just Norman's shows had such really great acting, fun stories, and it was just so funny. There were messages there, but it was so funny. And so with Clean Slate, it's so amazing in the tradition of Norman Lear to have a show in this anti-woke era starring a Black trans woman that isn't wagging a finger. It's about love, empathy, family.
Yeah.
And it's really funny.
You know what? I thought I had nothing to look forward to in February, and now I
now
do.
this is
And
it.
now I do. You've given us a reason and a purpose to hang on until February.
I thank you.
Can't wait.
Looking forward to it.
I am sending you much love. We are logging off, and thank you. Thank you.
We could do
You were
this all
generous
day.
with your time. We appreciate
Send
it.
my love to Mark.
I
and
sure
we'll
will.
see you soon.
Bye, Laverne.
Bye,
Mwah.
Laverne.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
That was fun.
Well, that's it, guys.
Is that it, Jen?
Yes,
Are you
that's
going to
it.
sign us off today?
I'm going to sign us off. Can't wait to talk to you all off camera next week. Bye.
Let's Talk Off Camera with Kelly Ripa is a production of Melojo Productions with help from Goat Rodeo. Our theme song is Follow Me from APM Music. From Melojo, our team is Kelly Ripa, Mark Consuelos, Albert Bianchini, Jan Chalet, Devin Schneider, Michael Halpern, Jacob Small, Roz Therian, Seth Gronquist, and Julia Desch. From Goat Rodeo, our team is Kara Schillen, Megan Nadolski, Max Johnston, Isabel Kirby McGowan, and Rebecca Seidel. Additional sound design by Terrence Bernardo. This show is powered by Stitcher.